I think we're ready to get started here. So, I forgot to do that too. Not Seesaw. Keep forgetting to update my slideshows. So today's session, excuse me, we're going to talk about virtual math manipulatives. I think that I've been aware of these apps for a little bit, and I think obviously in terms of some of the work that we might be doing from a distance in terms of students showing their thinking and showing their work, these I think might prove to be some pretty important tools. So wanted to talk about some of them. In the process of making this session, of planning this session, I found that they've made some new ones since the last time I looked into these. So that was an interesting experience getting to learn all of those. So we'll get started with those virtual math manipulatives. Just as a review about virtual training etiquette, please keep microphone muted and camera off during the training. I do have periods for Q&A that you can use if you want. You can unmute yourself, turn your camera. I'll also go through, you can use the chat function. I've got chat going here so I can see what's going on. Definitely ask questions if you have them there. Or if you're on my website, I have a Google form for you to submit. You can submit questions there as well. I will be monitoring those throughout the chat. I might answer some as we go through, and like I said, I have some built-in periods for Q&A if you have those as well. This session is being recorded in live stream. Please access the live stream through my website if you are not comfortable being recorded. Everything that we do today will be made available later. On the same website that you used to get to this session, it'll just be updated with the archived video, the lesson slides, and some of the other pieces. It'll all be there for you. You don't have to find a different link. Just go to the same one and you'll see all this stuff there. And then because there's a lot more of you than there are of me, I'm only able to offer limited tech support for issues that arise during the training. If you're having a hard time with the Zoom, there are a lot of participants in there, so it can kind of slow your machine down. So if you're finding delays or it's being really glitchy, it might work better to just view the live stream instead, because that's going to be a lot less resource intensive on your computer. But as always, I'll be offering office hours later on to help with troubleshooting, and I will talk more about those at the end of the session. Oh, too far. If you found my website to get to this session, but in case you closed it, the bit.ly/LT math manipulatives will get you back there. As mentioned, all the resources that I'm going to share during this session are available there, as well as a live stream and links to other resources. If you have any questions, I actually remembered to update it this time. If you're in the call, use the chat box to leave a question. If you're viewing the live stream, use the Google form. Like I said, I've got both of those up. I can see them, so I'm monitoring. I may not get to all questions by the end of the training, but I'll try to follow up as best as I can. Particularly on that Google form, you don't have to, but if you want to leave your name, that just makes it so if I'm not able to answer your question and it's something that I can follow up with you, I will send you an email with some resources or some tips later on. So we're going to talk about, forgot to update those two. Okay, that's fine. So today's session, we're going to talk about how to find the apps. There's 10 of them in total. We're going to go specifically through 4 of them. And then I'm going to give you some time to maybe try one of the other ones that we don't go over. We're going to talk about how the apps are all very similar in nature. So once I show you a couple, a lot of the same principles about how to use that app are going to apply on the rest of them. So that's why I'm only going to cover 4 specifically. But then we're going to spend some time if you want to try a different one, or just kind of spend some time working on one of the ones that we went through that you want to use more of. And then we'll, if we have time, we'll talk about kind of a sample workflow of how we might be able to use these as part of instruction, and then also in terms of students doing some work and turning it into you. So How to find these resources. So on my training page, which I'll pull up right here, underneath where the live stream video is, I actually have another part of my website for the math manipulatives that we're going to go through. I also have it linked because I know a lot of your students have been accessing things through my student links page throughout this this shutdown. So I do have a link from there as well. I'll just pull it up real quick to show you. So if you go through, this has actually been here the whole time. I just never actually got to making the page until this week or last week. But if you click right there, that will bring you to, this is where we're going to spend a lot of time during this session, is these 10 apps right here. And then the actual website where these come from is called the Math Learning Center. So it's mathlearningcenter.org. And then /resources/apps. That will get you to where you can find all these apps as well. So all of these links just bring you to the Math Learning Center website, just to try to make it a little bit easier, a few less clicks to get there. So you're definitely gonna want to have this page open because we're gonna spend a lot of time working from this. We're going to start with Math Clock. That's going to be the first one that we go into. And as we're talking about Math Clock, we're going to talk a lot about kind of what are the universal tools. So if I click on Math Clock, actually, before I do that, so these apps are available on just about any type of device. So if you are on a laptop, then if you click on either the icon or on the name, it will bring you to what is kind of called the web app. So it brings you to a website that has the app in it. If you are on an iPad, they have iPad apps for each of these. So if you click where it says iPad app, it'll bring you to the App Store where you can download that app. You can also use the web app. So the web app works on just about any type of device. If you're on a Chromebook, the Chrome app, basically it adds it into your shelf, your app shelf. So it's a little bit easier to find. But again, you can also just use the web app. If you're on an Android tablet, there are iPad apps, but there aren't Android apps. So you do have to use the web apps. You do have to load the website into your browser on your tablet and then follow those links to get there. And so actually some of what I'm going to be doing today is actually going to be on my Android tablet so that you can kind of see how that works. I will say that even on an Android tablet, the apps are very, very responsive. They work very well with a touchscreen interface. They're quite good. They've done a really good job with the design of these apps. So I'm actually going to get my tablet connected here. Or I'm going to try anyway. Sometimes it cooperates. There we go. Look at that first try. So what you're seeing right now is my Android tablet screen, my Samsung tablet screen. And I'm just going to go right ahead and click on the Math Clock icon. Or tap on it, I should say. And it's going to open it up in a new tab. And you're going to see this interface. Now, as we go through this, the universal tools. So every Math Center app, everything that we're going through today, basically has the same blue toolbar at the bottom. Some of the individual pieces are different based on the type of app you're using, but the general principle of the blue toolbar is the same. And in addition, you kind of have this blank white canvas that is yours for using however you want. So we'll go through some of the universal tools real quick. These little arrows right here, if you're working on something, by tapping or clicking on the start over, it just erases your canvas and you start back from blank. There's also a section right here in the case of this app for annotation tools. And they can include a shade tool, write equation, write text, and draw on your canvas. We'll go through each of those with a visual example. Duplicate and delete. Anything that you put on your canvas, you can make a copy of, or you can get rid of. Some apps have sharing tools where you can actually generate a code that you can share, and then they enter in that code, and then they can see what's on here. Because we're using Seesaw and some other tools, I'm not sure that I would recommend using a lot of that, because I think a lot of what we can do can be done through Seesaw as far as sharing. And then there's always this little I for info, and that's kind of like a cheat sheet for how to use the app. So we'll go in right now, and you'll see that, again, I have all of those tools at the bottom. In terms of the Math Clock app, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this button right here to add a clock onto my canvas. So I'm just going to press it. And there are 3 types of clocks, and we'll talk about each one. There's a geared hands, there's a free moving hands, and then there's a clock with fractions. I'm going to add a geared hands. So I'm just going to tap on geared hands, and now I have a clock in the middle of my screen. I can just click or tap and drag to move the clock around my screen. I can use these arrows right here to make it smaller or larger, to change the size. And then the way that the geared hands clock works is I can press on or tap on the hand, the minute hand, to change the time. And so the difference between the geared hands and the free moving hands is, on the free moving hands, I guess I'll have to shrink these down a bit to get them to both fit. There we go. Is you can move around the hour and minute hands on this one freely, however you want. Whereas on the geared hands, basically it's trying to give you an accurate depiction of time. So as you go through, you can set it to, set it to 224. A clock with fractions, when you pull it up, you can ask how many parts does it have. So we can divide the clock however we want. Maybe we want to do 12 for the number of hours, or 60 for the number of minutes, if you want to use this function. It's also possible to take an existing clock, a geared one or a freehand one, and turn it into fractions as well. So that's a pretty cool function. Some other things that you can do, and again, just to kind of go over some of the universal tools. If I wanted to make a duplicate of this clock, I just need to select it by clicking or tapping. And then I can press this button here to make a copy of it. So now I have 2 geared hands clocks. I can also click or select and press the trash can to get rid of it. So pretty simple all around. I also have this button right here. Kind of gives you a little bit more customization of your clock. So if I press on it, it shows me, do I want to have the hour hand? Do I want to have the minute hand? So I can check and uncheck those. So now I just have a minute hand. Now I just have an hour hand. And I can also label the hands. So you can show which one is the hour hand and which one is the minute hand. Because obviously some of your students are going to have a hard time distinguishing between this. And then I can press OK to get rid of that menu. The next button on here is a digital clock. So when you turn this on, and actually this option only works with the geared hands clock. You'll notice when I tap on the free hands that these gray out right here. Because you can kind of move the hands wherever you want, so you're not necessarily able to tell the time accurately. Whereas on the geared hands, your minute and hour are linked together like a real clock. So the digital clock, this button right here, when I press it, it will bring up another box and it will tell me what the time is. And as I move the minute and the hour hand around, you'll see that the time in the digital clock is changing with it. I can also click or tap on the digital clock and I can change the time that way. I can use these buttons to adjust the time. I could also just click in the text and type a 7. And you'll notice that the time basically immediately changed. The hour hand moved to 7:25. You can also do... Now the screen's a little hard. The screen's a little small, so it's kind of hard to use the buttons on here. It'd be easier to do on a laptop screen. But just so you know that those are available. The next button after it is what they call run or jump mode. And what that does is makes it so you can kind of set a time, a start time, and then when you move the minute hand after that, you'll kind of see how much time has been running. I'll show an example. So when I press that, I can... Hold on a second. Let me remember how to do this. Okay. So running time, I'm thinking about a different feature. My apologies. So now that the time is running, you see that it's working like an actual clock. And so the second hand is moving. And I can stop it. For jump, I can choose how many minutes to jump by. Again, it can work a little bit different on tablet mode. Let's see if I can I get that with my hand? No, it's not quite working for me. That's okay. I think it works better on the laptop than it does on the tablet. It's supposed to basically just allow you to move by increments of whatever time you set. The next function... Oh, that's the running time one. The next button. I got my buttons confused. There's so many buttons. This one allows you to set a start time. So let's make 7:30 here. And then when I press on the check mark, then if I move my clock, my minute hand, you'll see that now the clock is shading in green where the time has changed. So I can see how much time has changed when I've moved from 7:30 to 7:45. You can also go backwards too, because we all know that time travel is possible. Okay? And then this button here is the fraction button. So remember I talked about how you can basically make any of these clocks a fraction clock. That's the button to do that. And I can say how many parts, 1, 2, 3, 4, however many. I'm not going to make this a fraction clock. So those are the tools that are specific to the math clock. And those tend to be kind of, you have your start over button, which is a universal button, and then usually all of your app specific buttons are kind of together, and then the rest of your universal tools are usually together. So your universal tools, there's a shade tool, and basically all that does is it gives you a little box that you can use to cover something. So I can move it around I can grab these corners, these little triangles, and resize. So I could hide that whole clock if I wanted to. Or I could say if I wanted to do a digital clock mode, and then I wanted to shade the digital clock, and I wanted to have the students tell me what time it was. And then you can press the little eyeball to pull up the shade. So you can hide it, see if they can guess the time, and then show them if they're correct or not. And then you could just press the X to get rid of that shade. The next button is for equations. So if I press that, I get this little box right here. And it's going to move around a little bit because I'm on a tablet and it's a tiny screen here. Let's see, I might have to flip it. What happens if I flip it? There we go. Now we can see it all. So again, obviously we're not in like a math equation app, but if I wanted to say 9 plus 8 equals, and I could put a question mark, or I could put something in there. So obviously you might find this more useful in a different app, but that's a tool that's available. There's a text app. So you might want to do something like, what time is it? And then I put a shade over my digital clock, if you want to do something like that. And then there's a drawing tool. So if I select the drawing tool, you'll see that I have a new toolbar that pops up. And I have kind of a free drawing tool. I have a line drawing tool. I have a color palette, so I can draw things in different colors. I have an eraser tool, so I can erase stuff that I drew. And then I think, yeah, so the last button would just get rid of everything that you drew. And I can just press clear, and away it goes. So you've got a whole other way of kind of annotating, a little bit similar to what we were talking about in Seesaw. And then again, if I have a clock selected, I can choose to duplicate it, or I can delete it. I'm not going to talk too much about the sharing tools, because again, I think you're going to want Seesaw to be your sharing tool, but they're there. Lastly, the info, and again, as I mentioned, it's kind of your cheat sheet. So you can go through and it will show you a lot of the stuff that we've talked about. How to add a new clock, the different types of clocks, your display options, your digital display, run, jump, elapsed time, right? All of those different features that we were just talking about. So at this point, I'm going to take a quick pause. If anyone has any questions, before I show you a different app. And again, you can use the chat box. If you're in Zoom, you can use the Google form if you're watching the live stream on my website. Or again, if you're in the Zoom, please feel free to unmute if you'd like to ask a question. What was the name of this app? This one is called Math Clock. And so again, if we go back to my Math Manipulatives page, it's the first one on the list. And so you can just click on it. I might recommend, if you're planning on using these apps, to just bookmark this page. Because again, all of these link to the Math Learning Center's website, but this kind of brings everything together in fewer clicks. So you might want to just bookmark this page to make it easy to get to. We'll move on to the next one. So the next one on our list is number frames. I'm going to, again, because I'm on an Android tablet, I'm going to click on the picture or on the text, and it will bring me to the web app in my Google Chrome browser on the tablet. The web app works on pretty much every type of device. But if you're on an iPad and would prefer to have kind of an app on your home screen that does this, you can certainly go into the App Store and download it. There's a link there for you. You can't go wrong either way. The iPad app functions basically the same. So we're going to load. There's the Number Frames app. And the title is pretty self-explanatory. This is for using number frames like 5 frames or 10 frames or any one of those. You'll notice again our universal toolbar at the bottom. We have a lot of the same tools that we had there before. Start over, our annotation tools, duplicate and delete, our sharing tools, and the info. So that blue toolbar will be the same through all of your apps. I'm going to go and add a frame. So when I do that, I'm going to click or tap right up here on the frame. And then I can choose what type of frame I want to add. I can add a 5 frame, a 10 frame, a 20 frame, a 100 frame. I can also make a custom. Make a frame by dragging. So if I start in the top left corner and I just drag, I can make a 42 frame. Or I can make an 81 frame. Don't know if you'd want to use an 81 frame, but just in case, right? You've got the option of designing pretty much whatever frame you want. We're going to go ahead and add a 10 frame. And you'll see it just adds it right there, nice and easy. I can click or tap and drag to move it around, because I think they all kind of add, they kind of all show up in like the same place. So if you wanted to add multiple 10 frames, you can move them around however you want. Again, we can duplicate or delete. And then after that, you've got your counters, basically, that you can use in your 10 frame. And all you have to do is just click and drag on one of them and drop it in the 10 frame. So I can drop one, I can drop another one, I can drop 5 at a time, which is very smart. So if I drop 5 at a time, it's going to fill them in automatically in some spots. You may have to move a couple of them around to kind of get them the way that you want. And so we've got 7 in our 10 frame. So if we needed to figure out how much we need to add to 7 to make 10 in a 10 frame, we could then use a different colored counter to fill in the rest. So now we can see when we add 3 to 7, we make 10. Another thing you can do here is you can change, you can customize your counters if you want, which is this little button down here. And you can change the colors. So I can make the top counters yellow or green or black or red or blue. I can make the bottom ones, again, I can change the color. Note that the counters that have already been put in don't change. So you want to change them before you put them in. And then you can also change, do you want it to be a square counter? You can make it a starfish or a penguin or a frog or a butterfly or a ladybug. So you can change the appearance of your counters as well. We're going to make the top one a green frog and the bottom one a yellow penguin. So now when I go to add a frame, I can add 5 frogs and I can add 5 penguins. You can change the existing color of them just by going down to here and changing it. But in this case, you'd have to do it one at a time. This 5, let me go into the info because I actually forgot what it does. Oh, that's what it does. Okay. So this one here kind of breaks your frames down more into 5s. So if I select that, you'll kind of notice that some of the shading that goes into the boxes that separate them go away. And it's harder to see what it does on a 10 frame. But if I were to make a larger frame, like a 20 frame, you'll see here that it kind of removes some of the shading, but then adds a line here. So you can kind of count by 5, 5, 5, 5, or 10, 10. So it can make skip counting a little bit easier. I'm going to turn that off. Again, all of your universal tools, your shading, if you want to cover something up, if you want to write an equation, if you want to add text, or if you want to do some annotation. And again, all the rest of your stuff. So it looks pretty familiar. We'll stop here for questions real quick. We're going to do 4 of these together, and then I'm going to give you some time. Actually, we might do one more just to give you some more explore time. But we'll stop here for questions for a second. I see one here. Will the tech department add this to the self-service section on the Samsung tablets? So I believe because it's a website and not an app, I'm not sure that you can do that. But one of the things that I am hoping to have a conversation with, assuming that our students are getting Samsung tablets, is how we're going to set them up so that they're sort of consistent across all their devices, so that and having something like this easily available to the students, so that so that it looks the same across the different devices. We're still very early in that process, but that's where I'm hoping to go with it. Other questions? All right. So we're going to go to the next one, which is number line. We'll give it a second to load. Again, your common blue toolbar at the bottom is there. This one loads a little different. It's not a blank slate. It just kind of has a number line for you. But you'll see this box show up because you're going to want to sort of figure out how you want to customize your number line. You can use whole numbers, fractions, decimals. You can have no numbers. And you can even remove the tick marks if you want. If you choose one of these top ones, like a whole number, I can choose whether I want to delineate by 1 or by 2s. And you'll see, as I do it, it changes it automatically. Or 5s, or 10s, or 25s, or 100, or custom. So we could delineate by 23 if we wanted to. You get to choose that. Fractions, you can do by halves, by thirds, by fourths, all the way up through by 12ths. Let's go back here. There we go. Decimals, you can kind of choose by 1/10th, 100th, 1,000th, 0.5. You got a couple of different options there as well. And then another thing too is you can space your numbers apart. So these are kind of the most cramped that your numbers can get. I can space them out a little bit more, so you've got more space but fewer numbers on your screen, or I can make it really spaced out. And then the last piece, which is really useful, is start at. So you can choose where you want the first number on your number line to be. And you can drag through, so you can move along the number line, but just as a starting point, whatever the leftmost tick mark is. So if we wanted to start a number line at 10, and then select OK, now you'll see that furthest tick mark to the left is 10. So that's our starting point for now. So that's a good chunk of it. If you want to change these, that box just pops up in this menu right here. You just press that and you come back to where you started. And then the way that you use your number line is you create jumps. And jumps are right here. So I'm going to press that. And then now I have a jump that I can use. I can drag it around. It snaps to a tick mark, which is cool because I kind of leave it right there, and then you'll see it snaps to 17. I didn't quite line it up perfectly, but it snapped for me, which was pretty nice. These two squares right here, I can use to adjust the size of my jump. So I'm just going to press and hold, or you can click and hold on a laptop, and you can see that I'm resizing it. So now I'm jumping from 17 to 22. And then in the middle of this is a label. So if I press on that, then I can, or at least I thought I could. It might be a little bit different on the tablet. But you're normally supposed to be able to type something in there. In addition, this little button right here, that's what it does. Okay, forgot. So when you turn this on, this will show you the size of your jump, right? So we're jumping 4 numbers from 17 to 21. So 17 plus 4 equals 21. And then as I move it around, you'll see that it changes as I go. Just a pretty smart thing to do. This tool right here, you can use to hide, to mask your numbers, your labels. You can turn them on or off. And then, I'm trying to remember how this one works. I have to flip it. Yeah, there we go. Why isn't that dragging? That's interesting. That's fine though. We'll figure it out. Oh, that's the so this tool, that one right there is it's a labeler. So you can put a label in place of something else that's already there. So for some reason, if you wanted 6 to go between 10 and 12, you can do that. But you have the ability, particularly if you're not using the labels that are on there. If you use that option, then you can do that. And then again, your familiar universal tools, your shade, your equation, your text, your annotation, duplicate, delete, sharing, and info. Any questions on the number line? Oh, that's how you do it. So this little piece right here, I should explain this. I'm seeing when I click on the number line link in your apps, it keeps taking me to the number frame. Okay, if you click on the picture, then it should bring you here. I might have missed one of the other links. So thank you for yeah, that's why. So I made a mistake on this right here on the text. So I will fix that after the session. So thank you for bringing that to my attention. I will fix that. If you click on the picture, though, it will bring you to the number line. So this little thing right here is kind of your scroll. So you're at your starting place of 10, and you can kind of see that it's sort of spanning. This is showing you like how much of the number line from 10 to 110 that it's covering. And I can just click or tap and drag to move this along so I can proceed along my number line if I want to. So now you'll see that I'm covering a range from 58 to 86. Any questions? All right. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna spend some time looking at, because again, there's 10 of these, and we're already about 40 minutes into our session. So obviously, I don't have time to go through all of these. What I'd like to do is give you some time to do some exploring on your own, either to try a new app that we haven't covered yet. Maybe you want to look at Number Rack or GeoBoard or Money Pieces or Pattern Shapes or one of those. Or if you want to really dig in a little bit more into one that we've already covered, you certainly can do that as well. I will leave myself open if you have any questions. I'm not going to do a lot of talking. But if you have any questions, you can put those in the chat, or you can put those in the Google form, or you can unmute and ask away. But at this point, this is some time for you to explore and not have to listen to my voice. And in about 10 minutes, maybe I'll start a timer here.